At this moment, the sounds from Duanmu Sheng and the two Dark Knights' battle reached everyone's ears. Is this the true strength of the evil Sky Pavilion? However, the approaching limit of his lifespan, the deterioration of his cultivation base, Fan Xiuwen was perplexed. He killed Li Qing, a skilled archer in the nascent divinity tribulation realm, with just a strike. It seems like Ji Qiandao's strength is still at its peak. Master, your strength is peerless and amazing. Little Yuana exclaimed in surprise as she clapped her hands, shattering the silence in the great hall. She pointed at Fan Xiuwen and said, Master, there's someone else you missed. Zhou, Jifeng, and Pan Zhong were awestruck. They were not as shocked as Fan Xiuwen, since they had witnessed even more unbelievable scenes before this. Whether it was the nine-leaf avatar, Ji Qiandao's seemingly endless ultimate techniques that could kill his opponent with just a strike, or his strength that seemed to be still at its peak, they were more terrifying and shocking compared to the Great Seal of Fearlessness. Yi Qianxin, on the other hand, took one step back. Her frail body made it difficult for her to stand, so she took a seat on the chair. If her subordinates did not support her, nobody else would have helped her since they did not want to go near her. Fan Xiuwen's expression was indiscernible under his black mask. However, his silence and straight back seemed to show he was furious and unresigned. After a while, he said through gritted teeth, I won't hold you accountable for killing the other Black Knights. However, anyone who touches the four Dark Knights is my enemy. Everyone could clearly see the 180 degrees change in Fan Xiuwen's mannerism. He was no longer respectful when he spoke. He did not address Lu Zhou with a respectful term like he did before, and began to call Lu Zhou you. This clearly showed how angry he was. Lu Zhou continued to look at the battles taking place outside the Great Hall. Duanmu Sheng fought valiantly as the battle dragged on. Moreover, his affinity with the Overlord spear had increased as well. A moment ago, the two Dark Knights had the upper hand, but they were gradually being beaten back. At this moment, it seemed like they were evenly matched. It was clear that Duanmu Sheng would emerge victorious in the end. As for Ming Shirin, Lu Zhou was not worried in the least. Among the four Dark Knights, the one who had gotten the shorter end of the stick had to be Qinzhonghe, or Old First. Golden Court Mountain was the evil Sky Pavilion's territory. After all, the barrier was usually up, with their master restricting them. The disciples dared not wander out of its bound. Hence, they spent their days exploring the mountain and knew every nook and cranny like the back of their hands. Lu Zhou knew Ming Shirin intended to toy with his opponent by using his familiarity with the terrain to his advantage. Lu Zhou stroked his beard and looked at Fan Xiuwen. Lung Luo, in the end, you've overestimated yourself. Fan Xiuwen balled his hands together. His primal qi had grown agitated at this moment. The others took a step back. They knew Fan Xiuwen was going to make a move soon. If the evil Sky Pavilion doesn't take responsibility for Li Qing's death and give us an explanation, my brothers in the Black Knights and the palace will never let this matter go. Fan Xiuwen's energy spiked with every word he spoke. His energy continued to grow stronger and denser. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou remained calm as usual. He did not attack Fan Xiuwen immediately. He wanted to see what his former opponent, who was once on the top of the blacklist, had up his sleeves. He wanted to know why Fan Xiuwen was so confident about coming here. At this moment, Fan Xiuwen's primal qi surged out in all directions before a colossal avatar appeared. If the evil Sky Pavilion structure was not stable or was not protected with special formations, the appearance of the avatar would have made the pavilion collapse. E8 Leaf, Zhou Jifeng frowned slightly. He was slightly appalled by this. If they had not personally seen Lu Zhou's 9-leaf avatar, they would have been more afraid. Even among 8-leaf avatars, there was a difference in their strength. Ji Tiandao had already possessed an 8-leaf avatar 300 years ago when he was at the top of the blacklist. Currently, he had a 9-leaf avatar. Lu Zhou continued stroking his beard. He did not think Fan Xiuwen was a threat at all. He said flippantly, Lung Luo, is this all you got? Fan Xiuwen spoke in a deep voice. A few centuries ago, we were evenly matched. I don't think I'll be able to defeat you now, but it'll still end in a draw. As soon as he finished speaking, he began to move. filling up the room with his afterimages. Everyone stumbled backward. Fan Xiuwen's target, Zhou, the master of Evil Sky Pavilion, stood in his spot. He flicked his sleeve. A great net weave from energy seals shot out from his sleeves, shielding him. He thought to himself as he stroked his beard, Tao invisibility technique? He thought he would have to waste an impeccable card, but it seemed the binding cage card would suffice. The success rate is 30%. Will it hit him? Well, even if it doesn't hit him, it's still enough to distract and repel him, right? The net glittered with golden radiance and increased in size. What's this technique? Everyone was shocked by this never-seen-before sight. There was no technique in Great Yin that was similar to this. Fan Xiuwen shouted, "Aren't you overestimating yourself? You think this is enough to stop an 8-leaf avatar's Tao invisibility technique." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Fan Xiuwen moved at lightning speed toward the net. 10 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter. Clang. Before Fan Xiuwen reached Zhou, the net suddenly moved to the floor, and a large cage that was also shining with gold brilliance suddenly appeared, occupying most of the space in the Great Hall. Bam! Fan Xiuwen, who was using the Tao invisibility technique, charged into the cage, unable to stop his momentum. Ding! Captured an 8-leaf nascent divinity tribulation realm expert, rewarded with 200 merit points. The binding cage had landed. Zhou stroked his beard and nodded. Well, there's the word cage in its name after all. It can't possibly only be a net. This item is more useful than I had expected. He wondered how many merit points would he be rewarded with if he killed an 8-leaf target. Capturing the target had earned him fewer points compared to capturing a disciple of the Evil Sky Pavilion. If the binding cage card did not capture Fan Xiuwen, he would have incurred a loss. Fan Xiuwen rammed against the thin bars of the cage that was formed by special energy, trying to free himself. Zhou stood with his hands on his back as he asked, "Lung Luo, I'll ask you again. Who's the mastermind behind the Fish Dragon Village's incident?" At the same time, the cage began shrinking. Before this, it had taken up almost the entire space of the Great Hall. It began shrinking toward the center. Fan Xiuwen retreated, but he did not answer Zhou's question. He looked around the cage before saying in a deep voice, "You think you can keep me here? You think you can keep me here?" Fan Xiuwen's words were filled with confidence. After all 8-leaf nascent divinity tribulation realm cultivators were confident of their own strength. The 4-walled cage formed a square matrix and continued to shrink. Fan Xiuwen took 3 steps back. He raised his arms before himself and began making hand seals. Zhou nodded lightly and praised him. The Tao invisibility grand technique? This was a good opportunity for him to test binding cage's ability. Would the cage be able to withstand the grand technique? In just a blink of an eye, Fan Xiuwen completed the hand seals. As soon as he was done, a wave of energy surged out from him again. Bang! The cage continued to shrink. Bang! 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 Countless afterimages ricocheted off the cage's inner wall. It was as though a frenzied beast was rampaging the cage at this moment. The eyes of the average person would not be able to catch the movements of Fan Xiuwen's afterimages. His speed was too fast after all. However, cultivators would still be able to catch glimpses of his movements, even if it was not very clear. This showed that Fan Xiuwen's strength was extraordinary. The banging noise continued to resonate in the Great Hall. However, even with the grand technique, Fan Xiuwen failed to free himself from the binding cage. Zhou shook his head. You can only blame yourself for being unlucky. The capture rate is only 30%, and yet you still got caught. After a while, he found that the banging noise grated on his ears. He called out, "Shrink." With the simple command, the binding cage shrank at an amazing speed. Crack! Fan Xiuwen's armor and mask were shattered, revealing his face. The cage had now shrunk itself to the point where it was binding his body. Zhou only glanced at Fan Xiuwen indifferently before he averted his eyes into the distance. Fan Xiuwen's face was disfigured, making him look terrifying. Well, as the saying went, it would be difficult to keep one's shoes dry if one were to frequently travel along the river. Fan Shouwen had committed all sorts of evil deeds 300 years ago. It was not surprising that he would bear the scars for that. After that, he had taken a completely different path from Ji Tiandao. It was ironic to see him in this state. Zhou said, "From the very beginning until the end, you're the one who had overestimated yourself." At this point, Fan Shouwen had given up on struggling. He could sense that the cage was not only locking him in place, but it was also affecting his cultivation base. He tried to circulate the primal qi in his Dantian sea of qi, but to no avail. He did not even entertain the thought of breaking free, using his physical strength. He looked at Zhou, clearly unwilling to accept his defeat. Zhou seemed unbothered by the events, as though everything had gone according to his plan, which it did. "Oh, old senior, what is it that you want?" Fan Shouwen was puzzled. The evil sky pavilion's strength had truly exceeded his expectations. Everything that happened today was out of his expectations. Zhou asked coldly, "Who's the mastermind behind the Fish Dragon Village incident?" Fan Shouwen could not believe that this all-powerful old villain would offend the Black Knights and the important people in the palace for a traitor. He coughed and turned away. Zhou did not mind. He said, "I have time on my hands." "Time?" Fan Shouwen chuckled. 15 years? I'll give you 15 years, at most. After that, who will remember you?" Little Yuana raised her hand and retorted, "I will." Fan Shouwen looked at the girl speechlessly. Zhou only said, "That's not important. Old senior, it's pointless to kill me. All those who join the Black Knights are prepared to lose their lives. Even if you kill all of us, you won't get anything out of us." Obstinate. Zhou shook his head lightly. After that, he no longer bothered with Fan Shouwen. After all, Fan Shouwen had spent 300 years in the Black Knights. It was more than enough time for him to grow resilient and keep his mouth shut. Someone like Fan Shouwen could not be threatened with death. In any case, Zhou was not in a hurry. Since the people in this land thought he only had another decade or so to live, he would do his best to live a good and long life despite them. Outside the Great Hall, Duanmu Sheng seemed to have transformed into another person after sprouting a leaf. His primal qi was overbearing, and his movements were violent and harsh. Despite that, his mind was keen. He always managed to evade the two Dark Knights' attacks before they landed on him. The trio's battle was truly intense. Even the limestone flooring of the plaza, outside the Great Hall, was completely ruined. However, this was not the time to be concerned about such things. Zhou stroked his beard and calmly observed the battle. The trio was firmly locked in battle. After a while, he said in a deep voice, "Too slow?" His voice that had been suffused with primal qi traveled to Duanmu Sheng's ears. Duanmu Sheng understood his master's meaning. As he moved, his speed greatly increased suddenly. At this moment, the Overlord spear he was wielding could no longer be seen. After images could be seen everywhere. The two Dark Knights were slightly taken aback. After the drawn-out battle, it would be difficult for them to maintain their speed and strength. However, not only did Duanmu Sheng maintain his speed and strength, but it seemed as though they had increased as well. What a monster! Zhou pointed at the ongoing fight and said, "Lung Luo, not only did you overestimate yourself, but you truly underestimated the evil sky pavilion as well." It was obvious that Duanmu Sheng was fast gaining the upper hand. The two Dark Knights suddenly felt the pressure on them increasing dramatically as thousands of afterimages from the spears shot toward them. The attacks seemed to be unaffected by their energies and protection from their avatars. If the Overlord spear's full potential was unleashed, it could even break avatars. The two Dark Knights began to buckle under the pressure as they retreated with their avatars. Impossible. How could a nascent Divinity Tribulation Realm cultivator, who had just sprouted a leaf pressure, a two-leaf, and three-leaf nascent Divinity Tribulation Realm cultivator at the same time? When Duanmu Sheng leaped up, Zhou said to him, "When are you going to use your strongest technique, if not now?" The strongest technique of a cultivation method was called a grand technique. A grand technique would drain much of one's primal qi. Therefore, cultivators would not recklessly cast their grand techniques. However, Duanmu Sheng seemed like a machine that was filled with unlimited primal qi. He did not show any signs of slowing down at all. After listening to his master's words, he was filled with confidence. He brandished his overlord spear as he remembered Lu Zhou's demonstration of a grand technique. The spear and the sword were just a means to the same end. He cried out, "Imperfect divine intervention!" In just an instant, countless spear shadows appeared and descended. "Retreat!" The two dark knights fell back swiftly. Unfortunately, it was too late. Bang! 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 The two dark knights' protective energies were breached by the overlord spear. At the same time, the spear shadows thrust at them from left and right. With two quick jabs, they were sent flying. Crash! The two dark knights landed on the damaged limestone floor with a crash. Blood flowed out of the wounds on their shoulders. As they pressed their hands to their shoulders to staunch the bleeding, they looked at Duanmu Sheng in fear. They had been overwhelmingly defeated. There was no backhanded scheme or sneak attack. Duanmu Sheng had defeated them fairly. Lu Zhou's expression was calm. He stroked his beard and nodded. With the victory, Duanmu Sheng's confidence rose to the sky. He was ecstatic. He fell to one knee and cupped his hands together before he said, "Thank you for the instructions, Master. I'm glad I didn't fail you and managed to defeat these two." He pointed at Yu Chong and Duan Yanhong with his overlord spear, worried they would escape under his nose. Fan Xiuwen gripped the bars of cage. His eyes were filled with incredulity. "There's one more," Lu Zhou said coldly. Fan Xiuwen gulped. His initial confidence and bravado had been whittled away by the continuous blows. This subordinate is useless. This subordinate is useless. Yu Zhong and Duan Yanhong cried out in unison, looking ashamed. Upon hearing this, little Yuaner spoke up. "There's no need to call yourself useless. Since you're defeated by my master, you can brag about it in the future." Duanmu Sheng scratched his head. "Wasn't I the one who defeated them?" Little Yuaner giggled and moved to Lu Zhou's side. She said, "Third senior brother, you should thank Master for giving you the Overlord spears and to help your avatar to sprout a leaf." When little Yuaner mentioned the Overlord spear, the others were filled with envy. The highlight of the battle was the Overlord spear after all. The two Dark Knights, Yu Chong and Duan Yanhong, accepted their defeat gracefully. After all, they had been beaten up by a monster like Duanmu Sheng. Moreover, he was armed with a heaven-grade weapon. Duanmu Sheng nodded. "You're right, little junior sister. My imperfect divine intervention is a far cry from Master's strength. If it weren't for the Overlord spear, I wouldn't have been able to defeat those two." Yu Chong and Duan Yanhong looked up with great difficulty. When they saw the bound Fan Xiuwen, they looked frightened. Why was the leader of the Black Knights, a person with an 8-leaf avatar, powerless to fight back? At the very least, they had fought fiercely with their 2- and 3-leaf avatars, even though they were defeated in the end. With their leader's cultivation base, he should have been able to fight with Ji Tiandao for 3 days and 3 nights before the results were clear. They could not be blamed for being unaware of what had happened in the hall of Evil Sky Pavilion, since they were engrossed in their battle. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou was still standing inside the great hall, as though it was just another normal day. He looked at Yu Chong and Duan Yanhong before he said coldly, "Seal their cultivation bases." "Understood." Duanmu Sheng cupped his hands together. At this moment, Pan Zhong stepped forward and said, "Leave this to me. I'm an expert in this." A cultivator's cultivation base essentially circulates primal qi from their Dantian's sea of qi through their 8 extraordinary meridians. The conventional method of sealing the 8 meridians isn't as easy as it looks. Many cunning characters like to tweak their dantians so they can unblock their sealed meridians. Lu Zhou stood with his hands on his back as he nodded and said, "Indeed, the Clarity Sex Meridian sealing technique has its unique strong points." Pan Zhong felt even more motivated when he heard Lu Zhou's praise. Yu Chong glared at Pan Zhong and said, "The Clarity Sect is a prestigious sect of the Noble Path. How can a sect have a traitor like you?" These words pricked Pan Zhong's sore point. "Shut up, loser." He moved quickly and cast his meridian sealing technique. Duanmu Sheng stood at the side as he held the Overlord spear upside down. He kept a close eye on the two Dark Knights. If they made any sudden movements, he would instantly turn them into 2 dead souls. It did not take long before Pan Zhong sealed Yu Chong and Duan Yanhong's cultivation bases. He was only a divine court realm cultivator, so he nearly spent all his energy sealing two nascent divinity tribulation realm elites' cultivation bases. He did not have any primal chi left at this moment. After he wiped the sweat off his forehead, he cupped his hands together and said, "Pavilion Master, I've sealed their 8 meridians. Nobody can unblock them except for me." Lu Zhou merely waved his hand, and Pan Zhong returned to his spot. Then Lu Zhou said, "Lock them up. Keep them under constant supervision." Even with their cultivation bases sealed, he wanted someone to keep an eye on them at all times. It was good for Pan Zhong to feel confident, but being overconfident could lead to being conceited. Understood. Pan Zhong and Zhou Jifeng stepped forward to bring the two away. Without their cultivation bases, they were like a piece of meat on a chopping board. Lu Zhou returned to his throne in the great hall. He sat down slowly and called out, "Yi Tianxin." Yi Tianxin shuddered. Perhaps it was due to her weakened state, but she seemed to be in great pain. When Lu Zhou called her name, she got off the chair and fell on her knees. She said emotionally, "My master?" Lu Zhou shook his head with an indifferent expression on his face, ignoring Yi Tianxin.